Hello, welcome to Dovetail Learning's We Are Resilient, Reframing the Power of Our Perspective. I am delighted to bring this webinar to you today. Positive reframing is one of my favorite skills, and I'm really happy to be able to share how powerful it is with all of you. Before we get any further, I just want to appreciate you. I want to thank you for being you, for handling all the challenges that come up in life and taking care of the people around you and for caring. We know it's a lot, especially this time of year, and I want to thank you for that. A little bit about myself before we get too far. I have 2 adult children. I'm a cisgendered female with Irish background, and my daughter got married in April and my son just got engaged, so there's a lot of joy in my life, which is not right now. I've lived and worked all over the world, and my goal is to help empower others to live their best life. I'm also caring for my mother right now, who has Alzheimer's and landed in the hospital yesterday, so we have a lot of things going on, and I have a cat. The mission here at Dovetail Learning is to strengthen resilience in adults, youth, and children, and our vision is a world of kind, connected human beings. Our agenda today, we're going to talk about how reframing can strengthen our resilience, what is resilience and why strengthen it, and then really dive into the power of positive reframing and how it can help us in our life. And we'll give a little quick overview of the We Are Resilient approach at the end. So before we get any further, resilience. What is it? How can it help us? Why is it so important? So for us, we like to think of resilience as no ordinary superpower. It does not come from rare and special qualities, but from the everyday magic of being human. That's why our approach is called We Are Resilient, because we know we all have it already, and our goal through all of our trainings and our materials are just to help us strengthen it, be more intentional about how we use it, because we know that intentionality can have tremendous power. We define resilience as the ability to adapt and respond to meet challenges effectively. Seems pretty simple, but when you dive into it, it has a lot of parts to it. We know our resilience can be higher or lower in different situations. Yesterday, I was planning a great day. We were going to go to a concert and go for a hike with friends, finishing up Christmas shopping. I get the text from my brother, then the calls from my brother-in-law. My mother has broken her leg and being taken by an ambulance in the hospital. Suddenly my heart is going and I'm trying to handle all these things and how many family members do I need to connect, and suddenly my resilience feels really low. That can happen to all of us. One phone call, one text, one email, somebody walks in the door and we're feeling great and then we're not feeling so good. So that's part of our resilience and always will be. And our resilience can be strengthened through the practice of specific skills. Reframing is one of those skills. So when that call can come in, when something happens, we can, okay, how else can I feel myself being centered and calm in this situation? What can I do to do that? And those are the kind of skills that we like to teach. How does resilience help us? Well, we have our stress trigger reaction. So a stress event happens, like the phone call or the text from my brother yesterday. And then we have our protective patterns. Am I going to move into avoiding, and I'm going to attack it? How am I going to handle it? Sometimes we can have a peak reaction. It takes a long time to calm down and we lose our cool and we feel really depleted afterwards. That is a stress trigger reaction, and losing our cool doesn't feel that great. If we want to manage our stress trigger, when the stress trigger comes in, notice our protective patterns. I want to avoid it. I want to pretend this isn't happening. But if I wonder and assess, is that really going to help my family, my relationships if I ignore that phone call? No, I think I'm going to choose a resilience skill instead, so I can feel calmer and more centered. Then I can keep my cool. I can be the person that I want to be in that situation. We also know resilience is the awareness, mindset, and skills to create the best version of ourselves so we can contribute to family, school, workplace, community, and the world. I know for myself, practicing the We Are Resilient approach has allowed me to become a better version of myself. So when I'm in the hospital yesterday, my mother's screaming in pain. We're in the ER. There's a lot of things happening because it's a big medical center with a lot of things going on. And she's screaming in pain and she's thrashing, and I'm able to just help be calm as I try to walk her through this as we wait for the pain meds to walk in. I know that I'm able to be calmer and more centered in those very stressful situations because I'm practicing my skills and because I've practiced enough that I'm ready for those bumps like yesterday when they happen. So when we have awareness, mindsets, and skills, we can be more what we want to be. We've distinguished 5 different types of resilience, in fact, that we have, that when we dive into them, it helps us strengthen them. So our reactive resilience brings us protective patterns. Our personal resilience we practice through centering skills. Our group resilience, we have our collaborating skills. Our relationship skills are improved through connecting skills, and our cultural resilience is improved by becoming aware of our cultural patterns and the cultural patterns of others. We're not going to cover most of this today. It's all available in so many materials and webinars on our website at dovetaillearning.org. In general, how does resilience help us? It helps us become more effective. We can flourish, we can thrive. As I said yesterday, I was able to stay calm. We can set the boundaries we needed. I can navigate challenges. I felt safe. I was able to self-regulate. Despite the fact of all this stuff going on, I can listen more deeply to myself. Those things are all the ways of resilience and help us, which is why we're devoting our lives to helping resilience in others. So let's dive more into the resilient skill of positive reframing. What does that look like? What does that feel like? So positive reframing is just changing the view so we have a new you. It's hard to imagine it's that simple and yet that powerful, but it is. So if we're curious about it, it's how can I see the situation, the current situation, from a different perspective, right? That's changing the view for a new you. We understand that the words create worlds. We live in the worlds our conversation creates. So when we talk about something or someone, it shapes our reality. I'll give you an example. At one point, about 10 years ago, I was working in Kibera, which is a poor neighborhood in Nairobi, in Kenya. And we had been working on this project for a long time, maybe a couple of years myself, but many years for other people. And we had launched this big project. It was a sewage system in the and water providing system in the slums. And we weren't bringing in clients. Nobody was using the system that we had put so much money and time and energy into, and all the people we had trained to run it. We weren't getting the people in the door. And I was so discouraged. And I was like, well, this is just going to be a failure. So I was lying in bed at night. I'm like, oh, I just went to bed early. I'm like, I have no energy. I'm depressed. All this, we're just stuck. We're done. So I went to bed and I'm thinking about it. And I'm like, well, what's going to happen? Because after I leave, this building is still going to be here. These people are still going to be here. And I'm like, well, maybe somebody could turn it around and use a different system to turn it around. And I'm like, maybe I could be that person. Maybe I could be the turnaround person if I just have a different way of thinking about all of this. We brought in our corporate partners who are amazing from Procter & Gamble, and they gave us we spent several days coming up with new ways to think about how we could promote the center and what we could do with it. So we just shaped our reality differently. Instead of well, we have to do it this way, it was like, oh, we could do it that way. It was super powerful, and we got more clients in. The center started running much better, and people started using the services. And it really taught me that the power of changing our story. Oh, we've always done it this way. We have to do it this way. We have to look at it that way. If we just look at something differently, it can be different. Another example here is positive intent, right? Someone says something to us, and we can be super offended. Well, they think this, and I feel really bad about that. If we switch our glasses and say, well, they actually had positive intent. They actually weren't trying to harm us. They weren't trying to say something negative. What maybe did they mean underneath the words? Suddenly our perspective changes and we have a different view. Let me give you another example here. My husband and I were on a bike ride. We love to ride our bikes, and this was a bike ride last Sunday. And we're riding along, and my husband gets his bike stuck in a groove. And there was a bunch of leaves on the path. He gets his bike stuck, falls right in front of me. I go over my handlebars and I hit my head. Okay? Not a good situation. Battling, am I going to have a concussion? Bike's a little bit damaged. What are we going to do? So I could have, and I was tempted to, get mad at my husband. Why did you do this? You weren't riding safely, and now I'm hurt, and da-da-da. That is not the most empowering story I could tell myself. I could instead move into, I had no broken bones. He didn't have any broken bones. Nothing sprained. We were going to be okay. My head was going to take a little while to heal, but it was still going to be okay. So then I could start processing it from a different perspective. Now I got a friend to pick us up. We went home. I went through the whole concussion protocol to make sure I didn't have a concussion, make sure I was going to be okay. And then I'm like, okay, what positive story could I tell about this so it's not this horrible negative story? Like, well, my husband is doing some things like writing in Twilight, what I didn't feel was very safe. And maybe I could use this story, maybe I could use this event as a leverage so we can talk more about how he could be writing more safely. And that's what we did. So out of this story, I could say now we had an accident that has led to some improved changes. That's an example of you take positive framing. Here's this negative, there's this event, and I can either say, oh, it was horrible, and I was so upset and angry, and I was so damaged, or I can say, we had a bike accident that led us to more positive changes. Just changing the story. Reframing is similar to trying to find images in clouds. At first, we interpret a stressful situation one way, but with some effort, we can reinterpret it in a more positive way. One classic example is mistakes. So mistakes happen. We all make mistakes. It's part of life. Are we going to beat each other up or beat ourselves up for this mistake? Or are we going to see it as a learning opportunity? There's a movie, and I don't remember the name, but right at the beginning of the movie, it comes out that the lead character in the movie has made a mistake that cost the company like 40,000 pairs of shoes. I think they were a shoemaker, something like this. Or I don't know if it was a pair of shoes. Anyway, it was a lot of money. And he goes into the boss's office and he's thinking, okay, I'm going to be fired. There's no way I can pay back these $40,000. And the boss immediately says, oh, no, you're not fired. I've just invested $40,000 in your learning. So I want you to use that learning to make sure we make the company the best possible. Turning a mistake into learning, right? I spelled somebody's name wrong in a newsletter I sent out last week. How can I could either beat myself up or say, now I'm going to be really careful. I'm going to go through all of the names. In fact, I just caught another name that somebody else was going to send out wrong. And I'm like, okay, that was a mistake turning into learning. Obstacles, all the obstacles can become opportunities. COVID happens. When COVID happened, it was like easy to be like, oh my gosh, our life is horrible. And it was for some people, and people did lose their jobs, and I don't want to underestimate, and their lives. I don't want to underestimate that horrible thing that happened. And for some people, COVID became an opportunity for reflection, an opportunity for changing the way we're doing things, an opportunity to work more at home, spend more time with our family. So what became a horrible obstacle for some people became a positive opportunity. As I said before, negativity can be turned into misunderstanding. They're not really being meant negative, or maybe they are really being negative, but I don't have to take it as a personal attack. I can take it as they don't understand X, Y, or Z. Another example of positive framing, right? So last Thursday, I was going for a walk, was finally sort of released from a concussion protocol, and I could go for a walk with my friends. I got there early. I was so excited. I rushed out of my car, took this beautiful picture of the sunset. How fun is that? Got back to my car. I was going to lock it, and I couldn't find the keys. So here are my friends. I'm like, okay, we're just going to take the walk anyway. We'll find the keys when I get back. Came back, could not find the keys. And by now I'm super rattled. I can't start the car, so I don't think the keys are in the car. What's going to happen? I mean, I did nothing. I drove there and suddenly I just ran out to take a picture of the sunset and suddenly I can't find my keys. Then one of my friends who had said, I'm not leaving until we get this cleared, she got into the car and she was able to start it. Well, clearly the keys were in the car and I just couldn't find it. So I drove home and I asked my husband, who didn't have concussion issues, to search the car, and he was able to find the keys. So I could tell this story as, oh, I was so stupid. I did all these horrible things, I did feel a little bit stupid that I couldn't get the car started and I felt really rattled. But I also could move it into positive reframing and say, I have the best friend who was able to stay with me and make sure I was okay. She made sure she started the car. And when I'm not doing well, I have people who can take care of me, my friend and my husband. That's a way more empowering story for me to tell myself than to say, oh, I'm so stupid, I couldn't do X, Y, and Z. To say, yeah, I couldn't do X, Y, and Z, and I had other people to help. To me, that is reframing in a positive way. By the way, if you have any questions as you're going along, please put them in the chat or the Q&A. You will be getting a recording of this at the end, and you later today or tomorrow, and you'll also be getting the slides, so you'll have a way to remember all the things that I'm talking about. But feel free to jump in with questions in either the chat or Q&A if you have them as you go along. So how do we do positive reframing? Sometimes we think about possible alternatives. So that's certainly what happened for me when I had the bike accident. I was like, okay, how can I see this bike accident in a positive way? Because my head really hurt and there's a lot of things going on. But after thinking about it for a while, I came up with the learning possibility, right? So that was just one idea. You know, anytime you're in a situation, my husband at one point was in a situation with a colleague. It wasn't going very well. I'm like, what is the most empowering story you can tell me about this? And he's looking at me like, this hurts. It feels bad. There's no empowering. And I'm like, yeah, maybe there is. Let's see if we can come up with a way that you can tell the story to yourself and others that feels better than I'm just squashed and things aren't going well. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to adopt a long-term perspective. So, okay, this isn't feeling good now, but maybe over time it's going to happen. Things are going to be better. There's a lot of myths and other stories around helping us realize that what seems bad in the short term could actually be a positive thing in a larger term. For me, I know at one point I was applying for a job that I really, really wanted, and I had gone through a lot of the interviews, and then I didn't get the job. Of course, in the end, by not getting that job, it allowed me to do this work that I do with dovetail learning that I love. As a long-term perspective, that bump that I had, oh, thank goodness I didn't have that. So positive reframe is this bump that I have now, maybe in the future it's going to be the bump that maybe it's going to be helpful for me to not get what I thought I wanted, right? Moving from a problem to an opportunity, right? So there's a problem in front of you. Maybe my fundraising is not going well for this particular project. What can I do? What's the opportunity in here that I can have that I didn't see because I'm only looking at it as a problem? Sometimes it's seeing the truth in others' perspectives, right? So from my perspective, this person is doing this to me, but from their perspective, they're just doing what they need to do for themselves. So seeing the truth in the other perspective helps me move from I'm feeling like a victim to, well, maybe this is a situation in which that person needed that. I have to say, I use this with sports. I know it doesn't work for most people, but for myself, it works when the other team wins. Sometimes I think, well, maybe they really needed the win. Maybe we didn't need the win as much as they did. You can tell why I'm not a professional athlete, but just a way to share the truth of seeing others' perspective. And I have to say, when I've shared this with some people, they're like, I had never thought of it that way. Another thing to think about is to move from either or to both and. In other words, we can hold two perspectives at once. So for me, we have what I did yesterday, which was really hard and really challenging. I'm not gonna underestimate that. And this morning, I got to do a wonderful training with a great group of people that just gave me so much energy and positivity. So how am I? When someone asked me that a little bit ago, I was able to say, yes, on the one hand, I'm fabulous because I had a fabulous morning. On the other hand, I'm dealing with challenges. So positive framing didn't leave me solely in the story of my mother's challenge of her broken bones and the hospital stay and all that bringing. It also allows me to have the happiness and the other things that are going. So positive reframing can allow me to be both, and both are true. Sometimes we have to say just, I am doing the best I can, right? So this is not working well. But the positive reframing is I'm putting all the effort into it that I can, and that's the best I can. And just sometimes recognizing what I'm doing well, even if no one else sees it. All of those things can help us with positive reframing. Sometimes with positive framing questions, you can ask yourself, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? The underlying question I always like to ask is there another way to see this that would be more empowering for me? So I don't have to see it. Let's say I was doing the bar. I have a lot of friends who try to become lawyers and maybe failed the bar. Well, instead of looking at it as I'm a failure, I went to law school for many years and now I can't pass the bar. Is there another way to see this? Well, maybe I'm actually going to be happier in a different profession. Maybe I can use my legal expertise in a different way. It's just ways of thinking how we can be more empowered by looking at it in a different way. and thinking about what situation, past or present, can you use positive reframing on. And I love this little image because sometimes when we have a setback, sometimes actually we're actually closer to our goals. So again, it's the power of perspective, looking at things over time. Like sometimes setbacks and things are actually positive. Now, the science on this is clear. When we're reframing, it can actually alter our physical reactions because our physical reactions are actually based more on what we're thinking about a situation than the actual situation. So it's important to think about that. Reframing involves accessing our own sense of control, and it is empowering. And anytime we're feeling we have our own agency, we're in a better place mentally, we're in a better place in order to be more effective. Positive reframing involves self-compassion, like I'm doing the best I can, and that can be a powerful way to reframe. Now, I don't want to say positive reframing is toxic positivity when we're saying everything's okay. For example, today, I get to do this training. Everything's great. No, I still am holding the negativity and the challenges of my mother being in the hospital, right? The good part is we can hold two feelings or ideas at the same time. As human beings, we can do both. So we can have a positive reframe on one situation and we can hold, well, this is still really challenging. And I'm not going to underplay how bad that is, right? To have my mother in the hospital and who knows what's going to happen. That's going to be hard. And I don't want to say that isn't. But to understand with the power of positive reframing, it can be endless possibilities about how we can see a situation, and it can be super powerful. So, as I said, the micro practice here is, what is the most empowering story I can tell myself? That one question about any situation can help us move into that. So, any questions you have? In what situations do you want to work on positive reframing? Think about a situation that is bothering you, and how can you reframe it so you feel most empowered? Any questions you have? Feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. Okay, I have a question here. I'm headed home for the holidays. I know I will be almost accosted by my aunt and uncle who have different political views. I find their position offensive and I dread going home. How can I reframe this? That's a situation I think a lot of people find themselves in, just like they're in a group with people and they don't, what are they going to say about that? So how can you reframe that? I would say, well, one, you're getting exposed to views that you might not necessarily have. So it's helpful to open our minds to things. Two, that your aunt and uncle still are willing to have a relationship with you, even though you guys have different views. Three, it helps you to think about positions more deeply when you hear other people's perspectives, sometimes if we can open ourselves. Four, you can set your own boundaries. So you're in a position as a human being to say, thank you, I'm not willing to talk about this now, I'm going to leave, right? So we're able to do that. We're not slaves, we're not tied down, so we can create boundaries. It's just a few examples. I don't know if that's super helpful, but it's just what I can think of at the moment. Another question here. We lost my grandfather to COVID, which makes me sad at Christmas. Should I try to reframe this? I think that situation I would put in the both and category. I think it's really important to just be aware of your feelings and like, yeah, you're feeling sad. You're feeling sad, and Christmas brings out a lot of sadness in a lot of people. And this idea that we have to positive reframe everything can feel enormous pressure that's not actually helpful. And your grandfather loved you, and you have a close family, whoever that is made up of, because you're afraid of losing your grandfather. So what other ands can you put in the picture? Whatever the and is, right? You're able to celebrate together. You're able to be together. So you can hold the sadness, and the reframe can be the other positive things that you can find in the situation. Once a week, once I'm thinking about my grandfather, who's important to me, and I'm giving this room in my life for that, even if it's filled with sadness. That's another reframe that could happen. So just some ideas. You're able to do it all positive reframing. You're able to do better for yourselves than you are for other people. And I will say, all of our centering skills are really meant to be practiced internally first before we try to help coach other people in it. Because telling people, well, you should have a positive reframe is kind of moves into toxic positivity. But being able to feel it yourself, that's when we're really using the skill in a powerful way. Another question here. My boss is a jerk who always micromanages me. I want a new job, but this new job, my old job pays more than other jobs I have seen. How can I change my perspective on him? Yeah, a lot of times it feels like it's other people that we need to, change. So what's a positive reframe on this? One, that you're making a salary that you appreciate. So that's one positive reframe. Two is that you have other possibilities perhaps out there. And three, you're able to think of those other things, right? So just kind of pulling back from the little situation and thinking about other kinds of things. I want a new job. Well, maybe you're able to get training or other things. So maybe you can't get a new job now, but maybe you can come up with a plan for a new job that pays as much in the future. So it's kind of coming up with a larger perspective. I think that hopefully that's helpful instead of just focusing on like, I can't do anything about this right now. It's like, what can I do about it in the future? How can I look about it in the past? And like empowering here, I'm in a job that I don't like, but I'm getting paid so I can pay my bills. So that's one, like thinking about positive reframing in this very specific aspect. Or I'm in a job that I don't like, but I can make a plan for getting a different job in the future. So thinking about it in terms of time. So place, time, a lot of different ways to think about this. How can I change my perspective on him? Sometimes it's learning their story. So talking about more specifically, having lunch with him or in a different situation and learning something else about him, or maybe learning it from other people. Like, do you know if he's had any challenges? Because I know for myself, when I learn about people's particular stories and their challenges, it helps me deal with behavior that I find more troubling because I understand what happened to them and it helps me understand their behavior. So those are all examples of trying to change our perspective so that we can have a more empowering life. Hopefully this was helpful. I will again send the email. I'll send an email out to everyone with the slides and with links to the recording. So thank you so much for joining me and have a wonderful day.